All right, let's get going. Welcome this evening to everyone who's joined us to another episode of our Conscious Conversations. I'm very excited for our talk tonight. Talking to Carly. Carly Waterbears, how you're written on my phone.
Yes.
Carly has a business called The Wild Love, which I really love the title, and I'm sure we'll get into it in just a minute. Thank you so much for joining us, making the time. Kind of talking from one mountain to another, because you also live in the middle of nowhere. Cool.
Yep.
So if everyone was joined, I have muted you all so we don't have lots of people talking at once. And there is a chat screen. If you have any questions for us while we're having our conversation, you're welcome to type it in the chat screen, and we'll answer it when we have a gap, or we can answer questions at the end. So I think that's about it. Also, these shows are recorded and they're on our website. So if you liked it and you want to share friends and family, you can send them over to our site. I'll paste the link for you guys a little bit later. So Carly, tell us how you got the wild love.
So the long story or the short story?
Jeez, I think for tonight, maybe the short one. You
Okay.
do 7-day retreats, so the long one would probably take us all night, right?
Yeah.
I want to get the long story, I definitely do, but in a hot, maybe not on Zoom.
Okay, cool. So it started from this feeling and this need for myself to connect with women. That was one reason. And then another reason was I struggled to find a job actually, and that I loved and purpose. And I've done a lot of different courses and studied a lot of things and worked in various places, but always also very scared to work for other people, always kind of doing my own thing, starting all these little businesses and through all the passions that I have. And eventually I realized, okay, I moved off this farm that I'm on now where the wildlife is held, and I went traveling. I just met Nathan before, my partner, he's my fiance. And I was like, okay, if this doesn't work out, like I'm staying in America or in Central America, wherever I was. And if it works out, I'm coming back and I'm doing something with this farm. And so I thought, okay, I love cooking, I love plants, I love nature, I love being with animals, and I need some more connection in my life. So let me put it all together. And I love doing all these things, and I'm really good at all of these things, or I want to upskill in some of these things. And so I created the Wild Love. And initially it wasn't actually, it's completely evolved, but that was how it started. That's kind of where it first began.
Okay, so was the intention always to have retreats and workshops and, get people there and have an experience?
Yeah, so it was weird because I feel like I started the other way around. I started with retreats, just went like straight in, 3-night retreats, first retreat hosting on my own. And then after 2 years of doing that, I started running workshops in Cape Town. So I did it the other way around really, but it actually worked out. And the intention was really to host experiences in nature for women.
Okay, amazing. And we will touch a lot on nature, which is very dear to my heart too. One of the questions I always ask people who come on here is, we call this Conscious Conversations to get a little bit more light into the world. What is your view, perspective, kind of thinking around what is conscious for you?
Well, it's lots of things. It's really about authenticity, I would say. It's really being authentic and being an authentic human that is available to do the work on myself. That's me being a conscious human, stepping up into the world, being like, okay, I'm going to be conscious of my actions and of my thoughts and of my feelings, and claim my own feelings, and really, do the work on myself to show up in the world.
Okay, awesome.
The short answer.
I see that on one of your retreats, one of the sections you offer is conscious communication. So how does that differ? What is conscious communication? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, another word that I would use is authentic relating. It's really about communicating clearly again, claiming my feelings and my thoughts, and really owning my own stuff, and also kind of stepping out of the drama triangle, or just drama, the drama, the dream that we live in, this like just pulls us into the drama, and which is what I feel that I'll speak for myself only. I can only speak for myself. I feel like growing up with my certain conditioning and society's conditioning and parents and ancestral patterning, and trying to break away from that and understand that. So really unraveling those patterns and that conditioning to show up consciously, and to be able to communicate my needs and my desires clearly without projecting onto other people's, and yeah, just really claiming my own stuff.
Okay, so then you obviously take people through like a process of what, say, conscious communication would look like versus just a screaming match.
Yes. Yeah. So there's certain tools and exercises that I take them through, and they'll do some partner work. We'll go through various like I statements, things like that. So just really simple little tools that we'll then practice in a circle. So then we'll do some sharing. So really to take time, especially on retreat, is really lovely if it's a 7-day retreat, because we have time to practice every evening, or just throughout the whole retreat. And really the women are allowed to, or are able to, hold themselves accountable, hold each other accountable, and in a supportive, safe, loving way. And it's, I find it's a really beautiful way to start that practice, because it can seem simple, even just using I statements, but it's actually really challenging, the way that we've been brought up in the world. It's challenging to claim stuff that's difficult to look at or uncomfortable. And in these spaces, it's just really safe for women to kind of let go and be vulnerable and make mistakes. It's all okay.
Okay. Give us an example of an I statement.
Okay. So an example is, instead of saying, can I try to think of it? I always use the most complicated ones. So
Well, don't worry,
instead
we
of
don't
saying, you know, when your friends don't call you and you feel really sad because you feel left out, and then you just go and cry in your bedroom, you know, those days. Instead of saying, so that's in that moment, I'm not really talking about myself. I'm saying, you know, when you like, who is you,
Okay.
or you know, when they do that. So instead of saying that, I could say, I feel really sad when my friends don't call me. I feel left out. I feel unheard and unseen, and I go and I cried in my bedroom. As it's a silly example, but
Yeah,
so
no, no,
it's
powerful for sure.
because it can be really, it's hard to look at that. It's uncomfortable. It's a vulnerable space to be in, and so often we project it onto other people, or we use you and they and we instead of I, like myself. And it's a very simple tool, but it's the one that I feel like if we can work on that first, then it's the first kind of shift to really developing conscious communication, or clear communication, authentic communication.
Sure. I mean, that's fantastic. You're taking ownership of your state and your space in the world.
Mm.
That's pretty important.
Yeah.
So I noticed that on your site, you also talk about, you look at 4 different aspects in your event: empowering, rewilding, nourishing, and moving. So I think, you know, the conscious communication leads quite nicely into empowering.
Yeah.
You know, you spoke a little about, you know, conditioning and programming in childhood and all the ideas you have, but, you know, what is the issue in the empowerment? Like, why even address it? Like, why are women not empowered? I mean, we could say the same thing for men, of course, but I mean, you work with women, so.
Yeah. So I feel like, sure, I feel like, I mean, I've been going deep into this stuff recently. I've been buying a lot of books, and my partner's also been buying a lot of books that he's reading to me, and all about civilization, and how progress actually been positive for us. And so one of those things is, I feel like it's left us as a culture, as in the world, as a society, quite disempowered, everyone. And then for women, I feel like part of the work that I've been doing is claiming the word witch, which I know not everyone likes, and it's a lot of stigma carried around it, which is interesting in itself. It's just a word. But it's been powerful just using that. And it's really because from the research that I've done and just from my own lineage, the disempowerment comes from the burning of the witches, as an example of women who were healers, who were powerful in their villages and in their communities, were shut down. And often, I mean, here's something for myself that I really struggle with is speaking my truth, is public speaking. My mouth goes really dry, my throat closes up. It doesn't really matter how confident I am before I know what I'm talking about, or I can be the most bubbly, loud person, but there's like this part of me that feels I get very closed up, and I've been working with that a lot, and noticing the feelings in my body when this happens, and I connected to that. So that's just one example of, as women, our innate wisdom and healing abilities was taken from us, was shut down and suppressed by the patriarchy, or by the the state then, which was usually the church, or and it's really interesting. There's actually a documentary called The Burning Times, which I highly recommend everyone to watch. It's fascinating, and it talks a bit about that. So that's just one aspect. And then there's also the aspect of our conditioning, of our trauma that we faced, and that our parents and our grandparents have, and that's been carried through. So it's this working through that, is we're in these disempowered states in the modern world, not really connecting to that primal part of ourselves, that wild part of ourselves, really feeling disconnected from that.
Sure. So much there.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, empower, if you're recognizing that the conditioning that you received, isn't giving you great results in your life. And on a greater macro level, we can look around the world and go, the results of the world right now are pretty damn dismal. So clearly something needs to change. And we all know the definition of insanity, doing the same old thing and expecting different results. But being the one to step out of the crowd, to go, hang on a moment, let's do things differently. I mean, that must be one of the biggest hurdles to really embodying empowering or empowerment. If people are going to not like me, or if I call myself this name, whatever it might be, I'm going to scare people, or I'm going to make people angry, even worse. I mean, that is a real, humans were actually burned for dispensing herbs. It's an actual thing. As insane as that is, we're still living with the fallout from that.
Totally.
Sure. So I'm curious then, one of the things you talk about in empowerment is embodiment practices, because in my understanding, as soon as you have trauma and you're going to shut down and you can disconnect from your body's not a safe place, the world is not a safe place. So what kind of work do you do to get people to reconnect to their bodies and feel it as a safe space again?
So I mean, there's a few things that I incorporate on the retreats myself, and then I also have facilitators that come in. But the things that I do are things like, we'll do cold water immersions. So really sitting in our discomfort, which is already helping us to show up in the world in other areas. Things like barefoot walking, hiking. I love conscious dance. So last year, I think I did my teacher training in conscious dance, and I've had really profound experiences myself, and I really wanted to incorporate that into the experiences, and that I think is a very profound way of releasing trauma and just really getting into the body and feeling where things are moving, and then also breath work. Then I don't personally offer the yoga, but there's also yoga, some qigong, natural movement. That's something I'm offering now in this upcoming retreat. A lot more natural movement, more fluid movement, less rigid kind of practices, qigong, things like that. Really, yeah, really being barefoot and dancing, things like that, and actually taking people through a deep journey. I actually did a training called Journey Through Dance, and it's really taking people on a journey through all the different experiences and the elements, and yeah, it's really powerful.
That's fantastic. Sure. I mean, there's a lot of really good things there. If people just try one or two of those, they're going to get massive results.
Yeah.
And being in the middle of the winter right now for us, cold water immersion is a great one to sit in your discomfort. And I mean, you're totally right. It trains your body how to be uncomfortable. There must be some crossover between that and our emotions and our mental state, just being able to sit in an uncomfortable place.
Yeah.
Sure.
Definitely.
Amazing. So rewilding is one of my favorite words. I mean, I am still a great fan of Daniel Vitalis's work. I mean, he's very much into rewilding, his Rewilding podcast. Tell us more about that. What does rewilding mean for you?
So rewilding, yeah, I feel like rewilding has been a theme for me since about 2010. I went to the, like, up in the bushveld and there by Hoedspruit area, and did a field guide nature course, and it changed my world. And I was like, yo, I've always wanted to be in nature and with animals, and then that really, it wasn't really rewilding, but it was the kind of catalyst for me to explore this. But it took a few years. I still did some other things, but it's always been kind of this theme of, I've always felt a bit of an outcast in a way, and I've always felt like I don't really fit into this modern society, like the modern world. I really struggle. And so rewilding kept popping up. And then when I started running my first retreats, it was nature-based, like let's be in nature. And then I started to like incorporate the word rewilding. I was like, well, what does rewilding mean for me? And it really is about, I mean, most of the things that I've said, it's about stepping out of this conditioning and this kind of, I feel like I'm in an echo chamber, and connecting to the land and connecting to, so I mean, there's a few things. There's the embodiment, there's the empowerment aspect. So rewilding my mind is one of the things, which is the empowerment work, the self-development work, the shadow work. Rewild my mind, and then rewild my body, or physically rewild, get out in nature and using my hands, connecting to the earth, connecting to my body, feeling my strength, feeling my power, kind of where can I push my limits. And I mean, I'm saying all that now, but it's really challenging. It's really hard for me even now. And, you know, because I offer these, I'm not like perfectly rewilded person or anything, but I'm on the journey, and I'm wanting to take women with me, because I found nothing in this country of where I could go and really experience more nature-based journeys or experiences, retreats, whatever you want to call them. I feel like my retreats we're not chilling, so retreat doesn't feel like the right word, but yeah, and to really come back to an empowered, wild, centered state of being, natural state of being, which I feel I'm more and more learning how far from that I am, how disconnected I have been from that. So rewilding incorporates our ancient wisdom practices as well. So things like red tent lodges, where women come together, and there's womb wisdom, blood mysteries, these ancient practices that we as women have always done, but also so disconnected from. That's a part of rewilding for myself. And then we touched on the embodiment practices, the bare feet, and then of course the bush skills, the bushcraft, which is also a big part coming up now. Really learning how to make fire with friction, learning how to build shelters, learning how to find water, things like that. Basket weaving, I'm not having that on this retreat, but that's something I've also been looking at, using natural fibers, eco dyeing, things like that. So really going back to crafts and skills with using our hands, off tech.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, because I see survival ranger. That was what you said you qualified as. So there's like
Yeah, oh
what
my
just being
gosh.
able to survive for a little while out in the wild.
Yeah, so I did this course last year because they're up near Joburg, because it was the only one I could find that was doing a lot of bushcraft. So he's more like army style. It was amazing. It was really challenging. It was a 10-day teacher training, and we basically went out and we had to do navigation, also cold water immersion, to try and like show you what hypothermia is like, and learning how to make your own bow drill and friction fire. And then he took us up into the wild, and we were a group of people, like 6 of us, and then we spent 2 nights together, and then 2 nights alone, solo survival, where you had to build a shelter yourself, things like that, which I'd been wanting to do for years, and I just couldn't find it. I know there's a lot of courses in the States and in the UK, but not really here that I could find. And so I did that. And so I focus more on the bushcrafts, or wilderness skills part of things, not really survival. I think survival is great, because one of the things that I learned was day hikers are at most risk of actually dying and getting lost, and actually being in grave danger, because they go up, let's say, Table Mountain, it gets misty and they get lost, and because it was a day hike, they don't have anything on them. They finish their water, they finish their energy bar, and then what? And so it's actually it was quite a very valuable course. And yeah, it just shows how far removed we are. I mean, just catching food, some of the people on the course were trying to catch crabs. They're like this big, and it was like really hard, and like things like that. I just didn't eat for 2 days. I was like, I'm good. And I don't know the plants up there. There was some Impepho and a few things, but I didn't know any of the plants up there. I was like, I would die. So it was it was eye-opening, and it was a beautiful, challenging experience. And I want to bring in elements of that on my retreat. So we're not going to be surviving, but I know another thing that I really love to incorporate is cooking over the fire. So wild food foraging, that's also a huge part of rewilding for me, knowing what to eat in the wild.
Yeah, that was the next point I want to get onto. But before we leave there, I mean, it's just crazy. The word "rewild" already indicates that, we once were wild and no longer. So I know Daniel has the Homo sapiens should be Homo domesticus fragilis, the fragile domesticated human. And
Totally, be so domesticated.
yeah, you find yourself in the bush for 2 days and you're pretty useless. Most people like couldn't cope, not at all. So I think it's such an amazing, because I think there must be some kind of psychological, deep fear around being able to feed yourself in a world where your food is entirely dependent on a supply chain, shops and that kind of thing. No idea what to eat in the wild, no idea how to survive in the wild. I think this is, considering our length of time on this planet as a hominid species, it's very recent that we've gone through this radical change in the way that we live in the world. And yeah, to your point earlier, I think that creates a lot of stress on our systems.
Yeah.
The reconnecting to the wild and to wild food, which is Nourish, which is the third element you look at. So, I mean, tell me a little bit about Nourish.
So yeah, Nourish. I mean, I started learning about medicinal plants and wild foods in 2010. So just before I went on this my field guide course that I did in 2011, and that was like opened my mind to all these trees. So this is up in the Bushveld, Limpopo province. So also the trees on here. I had to relearn everything in the Fynbos, but I really learned about lots of medicinal plants. Most of the trees are edible, the berries, like all over. You go into the Kruger National Park, or we weren't there, we're in another private nature reserve, but there's just food everywhere. I feel like much more food than here in Cape Town, at least. But loads of berries and trees, like dripping with delicious food. And I was blown away, and I really loved cooking. I did a cooking course as well, and I love cooking. And so then this was just like, okay, this is next level. I want to learn about this. I felt very drawn to finding wild foods. And And so then I moved here into Tilbach on this farm, and it's wild foods was scarce, but so I got into medicinal plants, and yeah, there's quite a lot you can forage for, and a lot of good medicinal plants for if you're in the wild and you just need, if you're feeling sick or you've got an upset stomach, you know, you've eaten something weird. There's so many amazing plants to heal and to help and to hydrate. And so I've been learning about, I mean, I'm always foraging. Right now there's so much chickweed in my garden, or on the farm. I'm just like, yes, it's amazing. I love it. It's like really, it's one of the, I have such a passion for it. I get really excited. Like it's the first time I've ever seen chickweed. Every time I see a new bunch, I'm like, oh my God, chickweed. It's so magical. Having these foods you can just pick up and eat. It's delicious and super nutritious, and it's just so amazing. I mean, dandelions as well still blow my mind. They're like the most amazing plants. You dig up the roots, you can make coffee. Great for your liver. Like they're super detoxing. They're yummy in salads. The flowers, the leaves you can stir fry, and they're weeds, which weeds to me is a very beautiful word now. So I'm really focusing on wild weeds at the moment, and because I was mostly focusing on Fynbos, and now there's a whole world of weeds out there that you can eat. So it's a part of what I do and what I teach, just one of the elements under the Rewilding umbrella.
Sure.
Yeah, it's incredible.
That's amazing. I mean, the more we know what we can eat in our environment, the better. And Fynbos can be quite tricky. I put it more in the medicinal camp than the edible camp for the most part.
Yeah.
Definitely some powerful medicinals there. What would you recommend for anyone who's dealing with flu at the moment? It seems to be very hot on everyone's minds. Which of our indigenous Fynbos or local
Yes,
plants?
I mean, there's actually so many for flu. So for the Fynbos, I would recommend the wild sage. The Salvia africana. Then there's also the wild rosemary, Kapok. They're both, you can drink as teas. You can make syrups from them, like cough syrups. The sages are really good for that. And then also Impepho is excellent if you burn it and inhale the smoke. If you've got congestion, it opens up the lungs and the airways. And then the one that's on everyone's mind is the Artemisia afra, or the African wormwood. And that's not Fynbos, but it grows around, and it's indigenous to South Africa, to the Eastern Cape more. And that is as a tincture or as a tea. You can also put it up your nostrils, and also very good decongestion. It's like one of the best ways to use it. Yeah, those are some of the plants I would recommend.
You know, the Artemisia is amazing. I've got quite a few bushes in my garden, and I got quite into making tea with them. It's amazing. For the first 3 days, I mean, I'm really good with bitter foods. I've kind of, you know, reintegrated my bitter element, and that tea was just on another level with bitterness. So I just stuck with it, and I'd make it really strong because that's just kind of how I like it, right? I'm going to notice this. And after 3 or 4 days, the bitterness went away, and now I absolutely love drinking it. And if I give anyone else a sip, they're like, gag, and they're like, "Are you insane?" And and I've heard it happens. You can actually, the bitterness goes away. And while it's doing its work, it's going to be crazy bitter, but just kind of persevere and get through that.
Yeah, it's so bitter. Well done. I have it as a tincture. I love it as a tincture. Then it's great. Or as an elixir, I add honey to it. It's brandy, honey, Artemisia afra, steep it or infuse it for a few weeks. It's delicious. A few drops, 3 times a day. Much better than tea, because I find I'm really not good with bitterness. I should be, but I'm not.
A friend of mine actually recently put it in a kombucha vat with a SCOBY and just let it ferment in the kombucha, and apparently that also extracts the nutrients, and then you have this kind of woody tasting kombucha.
Amazing. Oh.
Wow. And I mean, just generally eating things from the garden. I was recently last week out with my daughter Katara, and we decided to make we make garden tea, like mint tea with a whole bunch of different mints. We've got 5 or 6 in the garden. So I'll mix the Artemisia with the mint because that's a really good pairing. But on this specific day, we decided to go and pick flowers because springtime, everything's exploding. And we picked, I think, 11 or 12 different varieties of edible flowers, dried them out together, turn them into a tea mix. And like, when you want to pick me up, there's nothing better than having this cup of flower tea.
Totally. Totally. I love herbal teas. I love making herbal teas on my retreats, and people are like, wow, what is this? I'm like, I don't know. I just chucked a bit of like this pelargonium lavender, some artemisia, some rosemary wild, some Impepho, whatever. And it's like delicious. And I like a bit of bitterness if there's like some florally accents in it. So like lavender and rose. It's so yummy. I love it. And lemon pelargonium. Oh, it's the best.
That's very good. Yeah. We had quite a lot of rose petals to put in there. The scented roses have the most amazing flavor in tea.
Yeah.
Okay, nourish and then move. But I think you've spoken a bit about move already.
Yeah. Really barefoot practices. I would love. We kind of do a lot of hiking. We go swim naked. I mean, it's optional. Obviously, you don't have to be naked, but that's also one of the things that I really like to invite people to do. It's just, we're all women, and so it's a safe space. So we're welcome to swim naked, and we usually end up like painting each other with mud in the dam, and like kind of becomes a little ritual. And women can get very emotional actually, because they have said to me, like, I've never walk around naked. I never really swim naked. I'm just like, even if I'm on my own. I ask women sometimes if they're on their own, do they even sleep in bed naked or anything? Like, no, it's just not something, so disembodied, so, disconnected from their body. So it's something I love to invite people to do, which can be very uncomfortable. And yeah, so sometimes when I say that, people are like, oh no, I'm not going to come. I'm like, okay. But when they're there, it's usually amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine that must be a really profound action, just to reconnect with your body. I mean, to be fair, like, there's fear there that, is probably warranted over generations of, men not stepping up as the protectors that they should be, if they even need to be. So that's a great one. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much naked around my farm all the time.
No, it's great.
But I'm a guy. You're just a guy. That's normal.
No, but I think for lots of people, loads of people, I mean, nudity in general is like a hot topic. And so, yeah, I think it's important for everyone. And
Yeah, I think the human body it's been so sexualized. It's like, oh, you're naked, so then you must be sex. It's like, I'm just naked. I just don't have clothes on. I was born like this. I'm going to die like this. Seriously?
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, cool. That's a fantastic practice too. So talking about men, just came up there. Like, in your work, you must get, some consistent feedback from women, what they have to deal with relating in relationships, with the other sex. So, what could you say to guys to be like, what, just try a little bit more of this? How can we help in the process, really?
Sure, that's such a cool question. Yeah, so I feel like for myself, for men to be okay with to be vulnerable, really. Vulnerability. I think that's the number one thing that I can notice from men that I know, family, friends, that they really struggle. They really struggle to show their emotions, and kind of shy away from that. And then that really creates disconnection. And for myself, I really struggle then to also be vulnerable and to really express myself. And then there's friction, and it's like a wall. And how do two people, or relating in any way, friendship or as lovers or any family members, to have a real authentic connection if you're not going to be truthful and vulnerable. And it's I suppose it's this thing of men being told, like, oh, man up, be a man, they also have in their wounding of that. And so I guess actually the thing that I would say is go do men's circles. That's actually what I would say. Go to men's circles, or create your own men's circles. And because probably also men, I mean, I'm totally now, I don't know, but maybe men will feel more comfortable if they're on their own, not with women, to share some emotions and be vulnerable and chat about their own wounding, because we've all got our stuff, and I really don't, it's definitely not us against them. And yeah, I really feel men also need these spaces. So that's definitely what I would say. Go find those spaces to connect with each other and do that work on each other, on yourself.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I found it's so interesting how, you know, from childhood, you pretty much have your desires shut down on a consistent basis. Whatever you want, no, you can't have that. Whatever you express, don't express that. You know, it's very common. I mean, it's just the world we live in. It's how you get kind of pigeonholed into your specific societal perspective. And then suddenly as an adult, you're with a partner and your partner goes, what do you want? And you're like, what? What do you mean, what do I want?
Yeah, it's really sad. It's really sad. It's yeah.
So you must get into a lot of processes then of just unpicking, like, well, what do you actually want in your life? What is your desire telling you, you know, as a guide?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's challenging because often people don't want to let go, and yeah, so it's sometimes it's like can be hit and miss. It depends on the person, how much they're willing to just like let go. But that's why all these little practices help, because by the end of 7 days, usually everyone is just like glowing and beaming and really just open to growing together and learning more and doing this deep work, and yeah, the processes can be intense. So I obviously don't go into any I'm not a therapist or anything like that, so I just stick to what I've learned. One of the processes that I do, or one of the tools that I use, is I don't know if you've heard of them. They're called it's an organization called Women for Africa. It's their branch off of Women Within International, and it's basically the equivalent of the Mankind Project. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes.
So it's the women's version of the Mankind Project, and it's really like working with archetypes and shadow work, and there's deep processes. And I did the weekend, and then I did my guided training, and I'm in a weekly circle where we actually get together. Now we're doing it on Zoom. We were doing it in person once a week, and you unpack things, like these kind of different themes. And so I have this amazing tools behind me, or whatever, in me, and that I can share with people on my retreats, which is amazing. So it's different from, yeah, it's like it's specific kind of way that I do it. And yeah, and if I feel like I feel like I'll never step over what I'm capable of, rather kind of don't, yeah, but people do go deep. I mean, even just with breathwork, I mean, breathwork is insane. So it's very cool.
Sure. So much there. That's fantastic. Amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to paste your website in the chat here for people to check out. And I see you have put some dates down for your event. So do you know something we don't about lockdown?
So I mean, lockdown is a kind of touchy subject as well, which I don't know if we should go into that. But the thing is, okay, well, all I'll say is the work that I'm doing, the rewilding work, the self-empowerment work that I'm doing on myself and that I'm sharing with the world and with women, is work to be out of fear base and to be in an embodied, authentic, centered state of being. And the dates were there since last year already, and I didn't know lockdown was going to happen, and I'm keeping tabs on it, but from what I can tell, it should be fine. Leisure accommodation is open. The rule is no more than 2 people sharing a room. So my thinking is, if that is allowed, why can't a retreat be allowed? Just because we're all going to be doing the same things. It would be the same if it was just accommodation and everyone was there anyway. And obviously, yeah, I feel like the people who are not comfortable won't come, and the people who are will. And if things change and I will cancel, but as it stands, we are going ahead in October and December. So I've got 3 dates, 2 in October and 1 in December for my retreats. But yeah,
Well, I think
I'm crazy.
as a wild woman, the word allowed probably doesn't do much for you.
Yeah, yeah, I gotta be honest, I'm not gonna pretend like I've put a lot of thought into it, and I'm, being conscious of why I'm doing it and when I'm doing it, and I believe that the people who do book and who do come are making decisions, yeah, based on the awareness of what's going on and what feels true to them. And I feel like they are making an empowered choice, and this, no one's being forced to join. So
They're basically stepping up and trying to be healthy.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
It's
it's pretty much outdoors, so I feel like it will be good for people.
definitely. It sounds amazing. Like, I want to come. Can I come too? Is I just total no?
Well, actually, Nathan and I are thinking of doing mixed retreats together, like rewilding retreats for men and women. It's been something I've been wanting to do for a long time, is incorporate men, because of the work that I've done on myself and women's work, and how much I see it's so profound. And why is there not more work for men? Same kind of work. I really feel like it's needed and it's important, and it's kind of like, why isn't there all these beautiful things for them to go to? And so Nathan and I have been really speaking about it. So soon.
I think it's a great idea. Definitely let me know about that one.
Yeah.
So, Jill, thank you so much for sharing what you do with us. It's been amazing. Time has flown by, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, and check out Carly's website and book onto one of those dates. We've got some cool hang-ups next week. I'm talking to Roshana. I don't know if you know her, from Felton Sea. I did a course with her many years ago on Fynbos foraging, because I just love wild food. So that's going to be next Wednesday in the morning on IG Live. In the evening, I speak to Ken, who you also know. Ken is a very old friend of Baron's and mine, and just so knowledgeable on all sorts of things. I mean, we'll get into some pretty deep stuff there too. So for all of you listening, check that out. Otherwise, I asked if there are any questions, but it doesn't look like it. Everyone seems pretty happy with how things have gone here. Any questions? I'll give you guys one more second to think about it. Nope. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic evening. Love to Nathan.
Thank you so much. It was so cool to chat.
Yeah, I hope to see you guys again soon.
Yeah, definitely.